Well, sunny Wednesday morning after a longer than expected stay in Abingdon Spa, partly because I was trying to sort out my holiday arrangements for my trip to the Abingdonian workshop in a couple of weeks' time, and partly because I was trying to get a vet in to look at Plan to follow up from his illness a couple of months ago. We finally got a vet in yesterday morning, and he took him off for a blood test yesterday afternoon, so we can carry on while I wait for results. And it's a lovely day again. When I set off, it was very autumny, quite cold, lots of mist on top of the canal, and a very low sun shining right in my face, which is why I didn't film anything, because you just couldn't get anything. So I'm at the second lock of the day now, which is the Foss lock. You see the sun is still there, and you see a very much an autumn scene there with a bright blue sky. And this is another of those locks, like the Hatton 21 and the one before it, which actually has two channels. And it looks like, now I was told at Hatton that the single locks were the originals, and this was once, looks like it was a single lock. Just by that bridge you can see the curved stonework where the gate would have been mounted. Now we have a double lock. And again, apparently these were added in the 1930s, so we shall carry on and see what we can see. These are called the Foss locks because after the next lock we're going to pass over the Foss Way. A couple of weeks ago we passed over Watling Street, which is a modern main A road, but based on the same track as an original Roman road. And the Foss Way is another one exactly the same. And so let's fill this lock up now. Well, it's turned into a really lovely day. The sun is shining and I've had to take my jacket off. I was much too hot. And we're getting along quite nicely now. This is the Basscote locks, and this particular one, the top two are a staircase, a very short staircase, but it means that the bottom gate here is also the top gate of the lock above, so you have to be a little careful. You have to make sure the top lock is full before you go into the bottom, and to make sure the bottom is empty before you empty this lock, otherwise you can flood it. But I passed a boat coming down, so that's all nice and easy now. So I can just open this gate and get out of here, close the gate up again, and then I think it's straight on to Long Itchington then. So fingers crossed, making quite good time today. Just for a change, I thought I'd do a little bit of video that doesn't involve a lock. So it's just after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and according to my route planner I've already completed the day's travel, which is great because I'm going to make the most of this sunshine and get as far as I can before sunset, which is about 6:10 tonight. But yeah, it's a perfectly blue sky and all the autumn colours on the trees, and that bridge ahead is where we approach the village of Long Itchington. It's a nice little village. There's a pub by the next lock called the Two Boats, and we've been there a few times, and this is one of the times we stopped here once, and Marion and I tied the boat up just the other side of this bridge, went into the pub for lunch. We came back barely an hour later and found Flan the cat sitting in front of the stove, drying himself off. Somehow or other he managed to fall into the canal, and as always with cats, he'd got himself out all right and didn't want to talk about it though. You know, cats have their dignity, so we'll never know what happened while we were having our lunch. It's a very breezy day, so I'm not doing much filming, but I got going this afternoon and I'm now on the Oxford Canal, and up in there is the famous windmill on Napton on the Hill. I've not been up there because we've always been in a hurry going past, unfortunately, but Napton on the Hill looks like an interesting place because it is exactly as the name suggests. It's on a little outcrop of a hill and the canal winds around the bottom of it. So I'm now heading along here towards the Napton Locks, where I'll be going up the other side of the hill away from Napton. This is Wednesday, so after a pause this morning whilst I had a music lesson at Calcut Locks, I've now come through the 3 Calcut Locks and turned onto the Oxford Canal. And behind me, if I can get the angle right, is Napton on the Hill. That's actually the hill. You can just about see the arm of a windmill, sorry, the sail of a windmill sticking out between the trees. I got a picture of it earlier though. And just down here, that's the view. I've come through Lock 8 because there were a couple of volunteers there who very kindly helped me through. They tell me that locks 15 and 16 are chained up for the night due to water preservation. So I shall be going up this lot. We're back onto single locks again now on the Oxford Canal. So that means narrow locks. They're fairly close together here, so I should be able to work my way up this hill without too much problem, I hope, and more up before it gets dark, and then I'll be ready for locks 15 and 16 tomorrow morning. A pair of very kindly boaters are walking up the hill and they're helping me out, so I'm up Lock 11 now, having started at Lock 8. As you can see, it's a rather nice view as we're getting up towards the summit. We're going as far as Lock 14 tonight, and then 15 and 16 are locked up, so we'll have to wait till the morning. Well, I've stopped for the day, and here's the reason. Because I've got up just below Lock 14 and they're busy dredging the canal, which is very welcome. That seems to be sitting on the bottom there, their supports, and there's all the mud they've dredged up. And there's the little tugboat, which mostly tugs on the canal's push boats rather than pulling them. So you can see they've got the little buffer on the front there and they've attached the chains. But I'm just below there, Lock 14, so we got that far, but that's fine. We'll stop here for today, and then tomorrow morning we'll be able to carry on our journey. So yeah, that's fascinating there. I thought you were going to scoop the mud out, but no, he's actually using the digger to... Oh, look at that. You wouldn't want to fall in that. That's very gloopy. And rinse it dry. And that's it, and they're off now. Oh, sorry, I'll get out of your way here. Well, a dank Thursday morning, as you can see, not the sunshine of yesterday. I'm in the first lock of the day. Someone's helping me out again. I've now got to negotiate the dredger, which is busy just above the lock, dredging out silt as they were yesterday. And as you can see, the dredger is busy there, so I'm going to have to get around there. And then we'll be on to Marston Dolls. Well, yesterday was a lovely sunny autumn day. This is the other kind of autumn day. Very misty, and the air's damp with a very fine drizzle. Not quite enough to put up umbrellas and so on, but still noticeable. Right. So now just cruise on to Marston Dolls, locks 15 and 16, and then a long run with no locks at all down to the Claydon flights on the way towards Cropredy. Busy digging away. Ah, I see. That dredging, that's not dredging, that's actually emptying the barge. So they have two barges, and when one is full of silt, it's taken up there and they empty it, while the other one is being filled, and then swap them over. Just do a little bit more as we're coming out of here. Coming around the bend, because you can see the old engine arm. There are a few of these around the canal network when normally big steam engines were built and were attached to water sources, and then would pump it in. That's quite overgrown now, but it's permanent moorings, and quite nice permanent moorings actually. There's a car park on the other side. I was talking to a couple who have just putting their boat back in there, and they've just been for a cruise around the country and then back home to the engine arm. So it's a interesting life choice, that. Something to consider for future years. A permanent base, but able to go wandering as well. Right, well, that very fine mist is turning into a bit more like rain now, so I might have to get the waterproof trousers out in a moment. In fact, perhaps I should do it anyway. Well, what a difference an hour or so makes. The sun's come out, the rain's gone, and it's really nice cruising weather now. Over there in the distance, yes, in the centre of the picture, you can just see the windmill from on Napton Hill. So the canal's taken many twists and turns, but you can still see it. We're on the twistiest part of the canal at the moment, where we're going in a series of loops. So much so that just now I passed bridge 126, and then I went round a whole series of left hand, right hand, right hand, right hand again, and then I found bridge 127, and the two bridges are actually on the same track, going across the field. So there's the distance between them, if you're walking, is quite short, but there's quite a way on the boat. And now we're onto an even bigger loop around Wormleighton Hill, which is near Wormleighton village. Once we're around this, then we'll turn south and go in a rather more direct way down towards Claydon and Cropredy. Interesting little bit of wood carving on the towpath here. I've no idea why or how it's here. It appears to be just a section of tree trunk that's been carved. It's very evocative though. You get lots of nice little things like that along the canal. Yeah, we're just passing the site of Wormleighton Medieval Village. All you can see here now is a series of mounds and banks across the ground. see this every time I come down here, and it's always interesting, but I always forget to then look it up and find out why it's a site. The usual reason in the medieval period, of course, was the plague, Black Death. It took somewhere between 30 and 40% of the population in this country. So wherever the people went, they seem to have left their sheep behind. So they're still grazing there. We're nearly at the end of all the zigzagging now, and another mile or two I'll be at Claydon Locks. Friday morning, and despite the forecast of thunderstorms, it's a lovely day. People are going past in other boats in t-shirts and flip-flops, and I've got lots of volunteers now helping me out. So I'm already halfway down the Claydon flight of locks. That's the third lock behind me, and I just need to manoeuvre around this boat. There we go. It's a lot of activity this morning. I think I've passed a boat coming the other way in all 4 locks so far, and 2 or 3 others passed me before I got going as well. So it's the last rush before things get too cold, perhaps. Here's a lovely old working boat, so you can see how they were set up for commercial operations. So you've got the engine room and the boatman's cabin at the back. The boatman's cabin is right at the back. The engine room is where it says Arundel, and there's the cargo area. This is Broadmoor Lock, and just after here, there's a fine spray of rain in the air, so we're not completely out of it yet. Probably doesn't show up on the film, but just after here is Cropredy Marina, and I'm going to swing in there because I think I need some diesel. 1 PM Sunday, and the forecast for today was thunderstorms and heavy rain through till at least 7 or 8 o'clock this evening. However, that's not what's happening. We had lots of rain this morning, but it's all cleared up now, so I'm taking the opportunity to move down through Banbury Centre, and I'm going to stop at the water point just after the next lock and fill up and get rid of rubbish, and then I'm going to move down to a mooring on the edge of town. Then I can walk back to the big supermarket there, Morrison's, and stock up the cupboard before I launch off towards Oxford. But when we were here last year, this was all a big building site over here, but now we have a cinema and a whole load of restaurants and bars. So there's still 48-hour mooring all the way along here by the look of it, but there's also these pillars which have power on them. Now I don't know what that's all about, whether they're going to be card operated or online operated, so that when you make a temporary visit you can get power. I haven't seen anybody to ask yet. Now we're just passing through, and we're coming up to Tooley's Boatyard, where the boat was blacked in May last year. So the canal is now being very much enclosed in the town centre. Somebody on board. So I've just noticed we're passing the Millie M, which is our old friend Maffey's boat. I'm trying to decide if there's anybody on there. It was all locked up yesterday. And there's the old wooden boat Hardy, which was actually built here in Tooley's yard. I don't know if it's going to be a restoration project. I think it is in the long term. And almost lost amongst all the new development, there's Tooley's yard just on the right. That's where we had to go in That's the dry dock where they just pull a plug out and drain the water away into a river on the other side of the canal. Well, this is the service point in the middle of Banbury, and I'm taking on water, but on a very low water pressure supply, so it's taking quite a while. But there's also Elsan here, and toilets, rubbish facility, and this is where the original Oxford Canal actually got as far as Banbury and stopped because they ran out of money, and it was like that for a number of years. And this part from this lock onwards is the newer part that was built up, and over here is the bus station now. But apparently up until certainly the late 1930s this was a basin for boats, and the famous Tom Rolt and his wife Sonia prepared their narrowboat here for their journey, which turned into the book Narrowboat. They took the journey in September, October, November 1939, and that inspired the Inland Waterways Association, which gave us the canal network we have today. So this is a very significant spot. Well, another Monday morning, and off we go again. We're just south of Banbury now, and you can see behind me one of the very many lift bridges that are on this section of the canal. These are normally chained open, like you can see. I did have an encounter with one 4 years ago when strong winds ripped the chain out of the post and the bridge closed, and while I was trying to get it open in still strong winds, the boat got blown into it, broke the window at the front, fortunately just before I'd painted the cat picture on it. So the one that's got the picture is the second window. It's an interesting bit of canal, this, because the Oxford Canal got as far as Banbury when it was being built in the 18th century, and they ran out of money. So for a number of years that was the end of the canal. When they carried on, it was done with an eye to cheapness, so that's why there are little wooden lift bridges rather than stone bridges crossing the canal, and there are fewer and deeper locks along here. But we had tremendous storms last night, but they've all blown over now, and the thunder and lightning has gone. So I'm hoping to push along now and get down the bulk of this to Oxford in the next couple of days. I've been watching this area being developed. There's a lot of new housing has been built over there on the edge of Banbury, and there's the bridge behind me, and this whole area here has been landscaped into parkland, which looks rather pleasant. Oops, oh, a bit of a clatter there. That was a twig or something hitting the propeller. But these bridges rock on a curved piece of iron with teeth on it, which meshes into a flat piece of iron with teeth on it so that it can rock. The idea is that there's long wooden beams that are running out onto the ground there that counterbalance the weight of the bridge. And on a number of places I've seen brick piles like this, and the metal piece with the teeth and the brickwork, but no bridge. But there are dozens of them along here. Well, I certainly can't complain about the weather today. This is beautiful. There's a light breeze, but it's pretty warm still. And we're just at Somerton Lock. This is the deepest lock on the Oxford Canal at 12 feet. So it's also a bit deeper than the deepest lock on the Grand Union, which is 11 foot 1. So and it feels very deep. So I'm just giving you the view there. Yes, it feels deep because it's, like all the locks here, narrow. So I've just had lunch, so now I'm walking down to set the lock. There was a boat behind me, and of course that's gone through now. So I'll have to fill this lock before I can prepare it to go in. And there's this interesting little house here. There's another one that I passed on the first lock, which is now derelict, unfortunately. But they have them along here. These houses are 1 room deep. And this one, you can see the bywash from the lock goes around the back of the house. The other house, it actually went underneath the house, which must have been strange and quite noisy, I imagine, in the quiet of the night. That's where we've got to take the boat next, down there. So I'm just going to go and start filling this with these typical tilting post lock mechanisms. Mostly they're very easy to use. I've had a couple that have been a bit more difficult. Let's bring that back a bit. Yes, it's a very simple metal rack there with a couple of gear teeth and then a detent, a couple of pinions I should say, and we just wind it up. Now we can see the lock filling, and you can see the sill there, which represents the level of the bottom of the canal up above where the boat is at the moment. The usual sort of leakage here, but these locks don't take too long to fill because they're so narrow. Like I said before, they were very much on a budget when they built this last section of the Oxford Canal, and one of the budget options they did was to have a single gate at the top end, which is the same as we've got down there. And normally on a narrow lock like this, you'd have 2 gates in a V pointing upstream. But these were done, I believe, as a cost reduction measure, and there are fewer and deeper locks. So a 12-foot drop is pretty big. 6 to 7 feet is much more normal. So we're just trying to get to Oxford as economically as possible. Got a nice interesting little whirlpool developed there. As we're pulling the water out, and the bywash has now gone dry. There's no water rushing over there like there was just now, and that's because we're taking it out, sucking it down into the bank here on both sides and round and into the lock. Well, it's Wednesday morning and I'm on my way down on the last mile of the Oxford Canal, and I don't know if you could see in the background, but the wind's blowing and there's just a snowstorm of leaves coming down. But it's a very mild day yet again. So the plan is I get down to Isis Lock, which is the bottom lock of the canal, and then I go out onto a small channel called the Sheepwash Channel, which connects to the River Thames. And then for the rest of the journey, pretty much it's just downstream on the Thames. I've checked on online, and the stream warnings for current strength is all no warnings, so we're good to go. I had a bit of difficulty this morning with the lift bridge that I came across. It's a very old one and it needs someone to hold it open on the far bank, which of course I can't do. Originally, I'm told they could balance them so that they, if you open the bridge and there was no strong wind or anything, it would stay open. But one of the Canal and River Trust engineers told me the problem is it's an old structure and water soaks into the wood and upsets the balance almost as soon as they've done it. So they've kind of given up now, and they've just put a notice there saying get someone on your crew to sit on the beam. So I don't have a crew, so I had to wait until someone came along, and an American gentleman, as it turned out, on a longish visit to the UK, very kindly sat on the beam for me and helped me through. So now I can carry on. Well, after 222 miles cruising since Scarisbrooke Marina, we are now at the Oxford Canal terminus, as that sign says, and the lock in front is the final lock before moving on to the River Thames. A quick check of the River Thames conditions, and we're getting green flashing lights there, which means navigation conditions normal. And there's the bottom of the lock, and there's the sign saying take a sharp right. Oh, got the sun. There we are. Take a sharp right into the Sheepwash Channel and onto the Thames. This is Isis Lock, not a very deep one. There's the very final stub of the Oxford Canal behind us. The original canal basin has now been built over. The Nuffield College of the university and a car park that disappeared in the 1930s. What I'm about to do now, after 222 miles along the canals from Scarisbrooke up near between Ormskirk and Southport in Lancashire, we're now about to go out onto the Sheepwash Channel, as it's called. Don't see any sheep there. Perhaps they all wash earlier. And onto the River Thames. So you can't quite see around the bend, but the Thames is about 300 or 400 yards away now, under the railway line. And on we go. One time I came through here, I ended up witnessing somebody running down this side of the lock and finding the path goes nowhere, and the man chasing him, sort of being some kind of gang thug, turned out to be a plainclothes policeman, whipped out his handcuffs and then asked me if I could go out on the boat and collect a small bag that the man had thrown in the water. Right, oh, I'm just going to fix that. The antenna got caught up in some bushes and has been knocked, so I'm going to have to straighten it up. There's the Thames ahead. Have to go careful under the railway bridge behind me because there's some work going on. So now bit of an anticlimax if you think of the Thames as Tower Bridge and the Houses of Parliament and all that. But it's a flowing river, and the good news is it's flowing in my direction. That's the Sheepwash Channel behind me. And there goes the train, Great Western, going over the bridge into the station, which is just along here behind these houses. And now I just go along to the first lock, talk to the lockkeeper there, and get my licence from the Environment Agency to be on the River Thames for the next few days.